Hi, Therese. Thank you so much for coming again on to my channel and for doing another interview with us.
You're
Today,
welcome.
today we probably will be speaking a little bit about karma, reincarnation, and the violet flame, of course. So please have at it.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, I want to tell you I'm always very joyful to connect with you and with your listeners. And yes, the topic of karma and reincarnation is a very important one. Um, I've been doing a lot of research in the last few months about the biblical narrative and the Gnostic narrative, the Gnostic Gospels, and other sacred scriptures around the world. And we really see that the theme that is prevalent all the way through has to do with karma and reincarnation. And some Christians don't really want to believe in karma and reincarnation directly because they believe Jesus died for our sins, and therefore we just get to go home at the end of one life. There's even they like to quote the scripture in the Old Testament. I'm sorry, in the New Testament. I think it's in Galatians about how we only we die once and then we're judged, but that is very limited. It's a very limited statement because when we look at the Bible, we look at how Jesus and his disciples, for example, talked about John the Baptist as Elijah come again. And there were other sections in the various Gnostic Gospels where they talk about karma and reincarnation. It was really a given in that time of Jesus, the Essenes that he was a part of. The Essenes were a branch of Judaism and very mystical. And not just them, but like all around ancient Egypt, the Egyptian mysteries had this understanding. The Eastern teachings, of course, had this understanding. And so it was a given that souls are allowed to come back in if they haven't finished their job. And and I wanted to present it today from the perspective of the teachings of the Ascended Masters, because it's really amazing to understand what they have taught on this subject. Also, I wanted to direct your listeners to studies and books that have been given in the last, probably 50 years about the preexistence of the soul and the consciousness of the soul before coming into embodiment. Like there was The Secret Life of the Unborn Child was one book that came out a number of years ago, and others. And we see, like, for example, and again in the relationship between Jesus and John the Baptist, how when Mary went to visit Elizabeth, who was John's mom, the babe leaped in the room. Anyway, the point is that the babe leaped in the womb. The child of Elizabeth recognized the child in Mary, and they were connected. They were two souls who were connected, who were coming back in as cousins, but also for that spiritual mission that we know of in the River Jordan with all the baptisms and everything else. And and so the this again shows us the preexistence of the soul. There have been a number of different interviews of people in recent years of children who come back and who remember very well details of their previous life. And we see that happening. I see that a lot online, different ones who knew exactly where they were before they passed away. Give very vivid details, whether it was in a war situation like World War II, or whether it was there was another woman who died of an illness and she just remembered the town she was in, the home that her husband, her from that previous life, was still there. She went back to see him. She knew details about them that no one else would know. And so the point is that I think people are starting to really understand or awaken to this idea that we have most likely lived more than once. And the understanding is that the personality that we have, you and I and others, we do live once. The personality lives once. There will never be another Therese. That's it. I was born with that name and that personality that I developed in this life, and I will that will be the personality that I lay down when my body is laid down for the final time. But my soul has gone through and lived through many, many personalities in different lifetimes. And the soul remembers, and there are times, let's just say we remember gists of it. We go through what's called the veil of forgetfulness. And it's interesting because even the ancient Greeks understood this concept. They understood that you go through the veil of forgetfulness before you come back in. These were teachings that some of the Greek philosophers talked about even, and that was also like the influence around Jesus's time, whether it was Plato or others. And so anyway, we go through a certain level of forgetfulness, and that's a mercy of God, so that we don't have to remember all of our previous lifetimes with the same detail that we remember this one. We have enough challenges in one life that we don't need to, have the remembrance of all of the others. But when we get certain inklings of things from past lives, we start to see patterns. And I've noticed that in my own being, where over time I had the sense of certain past lives. And I noticed patterns, like even in the physical body. For example, for me, it's been for a number of lifetimes issues with my teeth. And sure enough, they're back. I've had to deal with teeth a lot more than the average person. And that's just one example. I've seen how different people, if you study past lives, you'll see there's certain physical things that come back. And if that's what's coming back in the physical body, it's also coming back in the emotional body. Like we will tend to carry the same emotional momentum, and even at the level of the mental, our thought forms. So we know we have four lower bodies. We have our physical body, that's the one we see, and then we have the mental body, which is the body we think through, and the emotional body, the body we feel through. And then we have what's called the etheric double, or the etheric body, which is the memory body. And if you want to look at it from the perspective of how it looks in the aura, the etheric body is the one that's right close to us, the closest. And then after that, I believe it's the emotional, and then the mental, if I'm correct. I'm trying to remember. The main point about this is that the emotional body is the largest body. And people who are embodied angels have even larger emotional bodies. And so the emotional body can be the most difficult one to control. All of these bodies have a direct influence on the health and well-being of the physical body, because any unresolved circumstances or feelings, or at first it goes through the mind, then it precipitates into the emotion, and then it precipitates into the physical plane. And anything unresolved ends up manifesting as some form of dis-ease or disease. And so these are all karmas that precipitate and come through. Now, the memory body that we take with us when we are, for example, when our soul travels, when we go to sleep at night, our soul travels. Also, it's the body that we take when we leave embodiment. When the other three bodies are disintegrated, the etheric body is the one that we take with us. And so what that means is that through this memory etheric body, there is a blueprint for our soul that then fashions the next set of bodies that we get in the next life, meaning the new mental, emotional, and physical body comes back again based on the blueprint that's held in the etheric body. And so it's really important to understand that the health or the pattern that's held in the etheric body is going to influence us again, lifetime after lifetime. And I'm bringing all of this up because we want to talk about the violet flame. And the violet flame is a spiritual energy, a spiritual action of transmutation, of forgiveness. It's a very great boon and gift to understand about it. It's actually very simple. We don't see the violet flame, most people don't, but it's we know our eyes have a very limited spectrum. I think it's in the 20% range. And so there's a whole bunch of spectrum outside of our eyes that exists that we don't see. And the violet flame falls in that spectrum. And so even if we don't see it, it's very much there. We can feel it. I have felt it very much so in my own experiences with it. And so the way to invoke the violet flame or to call it forth is by our free will, our spoken word. We're invoking it, we're calling it forth. And so we can do it with a decree like, I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. We can do it with a song, like a song to the violet flame. We can do it with, even if we want to, with meditation on the violet light. But the spoken word is more powerful. And the more we do a repetition of it, like a mantra, and of course, if we join other people and do it together, then there is a greater acceleration and a greater intensification of that light. What we're trying to do with our third eye is visualize this violet light, and then we're using our throat chakra to call it forth, and then we're using our heart to inspire it with love, so that it's an offering of divine love. And so we understand, and I'm going to give you an example in just a minute. We're going to do it. But when we're doing a violet flame mantra or decree, we are asking for this aspect of God, which is the seventh ray. It's literally a flame of God. And we know God is a sacred fire, God is the fire, God is a living fire, God is a living flame. And the flame has many different aspects. There are all kinds of colors of God's flame. There's blue flames, green flames, yellow flames, pink flames, white flames, and violet flames. And the violet aspect is the violet of transmutation and forgiveness. And so we're literally invoking that flame to come in, and we can visualize it going through our etheric body, our mental body, emotional body, physical body, to start to transmute the cause, effect, record, and memory of dis-ease and or conditions that we want to transmute, that we have carried from other lifetimes even, and that have been reinvigorated through our childhood circumstances. So some people have very challenging childhood circumstances, and these are, and even if you haven't, whatever your childhood circumstances, it's a reinvigoration of your past life karmas. It's a setup for you to learn. I just want to interject here. I was reading a quote by C.S. Lewis where he says, if you are looking for the world to just be an easygoing, happy, peaceful place, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But if you look at the world as a place for training and for correction, you will find it a lot more bearable. So we have to look at it that way. This is how the Gnostics looked at it. This is how all of those who have been true followers of Christ and of God have looked at it. We're here, it's a schoolroom, and we're here to learn, and we're here to overcome, and we're here to transmute past life errors, and we're here to change the blueprint of our being, starting with the etheric and then going down into the four lower bodies. So my daughter, for example, who's studying psychology, she said, well, psychology will do a lot of things. And it's true, psychology, it's good to study your psychology and to do all that. And Elizabeth Clare Prophet, Mother, recommended that. But at a certain point, if you don't invoke the violet flame, if you don't invoke the surrendering of the circumstance back to God, you get into a loop-de-loop in a way. You don't really get freedom. You might be able to analyze yourself all the way down to, the tiniest bit of yourself, but you haven't really set yourself free. The one thing that will set yourself free is the violet flame. And so it's good to couple therapy with the violet flame. And so let's just do it together for a moment so you can see what it's like. We're going to do something very simple, which is a mantra that we often start with, which is, I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. And so we're going to start by seeing that violet flame around us and visualizing it and loving it and calling it forth with gratitude and understanding this is very real. God is real. This is real. And like Jesus said, blessed are those who do not see and yet will believe, right? We're the ones who may not always see, but we can believe, and we are blessed for that. And so we're asking for this blessed violet flame to come forth. And so To say, I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. And then we can accelerate it. And now it's important to visualize it as we're doing it. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires. Now we can add other aspects. So for example, we could say America is a nation of violet fire, America is a purity God desires, or Earth is a planet of violet fire, Earth is a purity God desires. We can direct the violet flame into the situations around us. We can direct it into the environment, into pollution. We can direct it into war, famine, and so forth. We can direct it into the economy. Anywhere that we want the light of God, that is the freeing, transmuting energy, we can direct the violet flame into. So we say, let's just say, Earth is a planet of violet fire. Earth is a purity God desires. Visualize the entire world spinning in violet flame. Earth is a planet of violet fire. Earth is a purity God desires. Earth is a planet of violet fire. Earth is a purity God desires. Earth is a planet of violet fire. Earth is a purity God desires. Then we could add, you can be creative. You can say, Earth is the planet of violet fire. Earth is the freedom God desires. Earth is the planet of violet fire. Earth is the freedom God desires. Earth is the planet of violet fire. Earth is the freedom God desires. Earth is a planet of violet fire. Earth is the peace that God desires. Earth is a planet of violet fire. Earth is the peace that God desires. Earth is a planet of violet fire. Earth is the peace that God desires. So you're using your third eye. You're using your word, you're co-creating with God, with your own I am presence, your own divine self, and you're bringing that violet flame in. And this is the gift of the violet flame. And this is how we also heal ourselves and heal our past life karmas. And so it's very important to understand this karma and reincarnation, and to understand that we have been here so many times. Our souls have been here so many times, and some souls are older than others, meaning some souls have been around longer than others. Whether your soul's been here for 2,000 years or 200,000 years, there's only one way to really come home permanently in God, and that is to transmute the karma. And I was telling my daughter this morning, these little souls that come back in, they're here to do that. They were given the grace to reincarnate. It is a grace, it is a privilege, even if your circumstances are challenging, because it's an opportunity to balance karma. And of course, I don't in any way condone, like, for example, the horror of things that are going on in Gaza. But when I think of these children, I think of, oh my goodness, I'm praying for them, but I'm also realizing that they're balancing so much karma. And when horrible things happen, sometimes it's a karma balancing. And so whatever happens to us, when it's difficult, we can say, I consecrate this for the balancing of my karma. I consecrate my pain for the balancing of my karma. And so we move from being victims to being co-creators, and to understand that nothing that happens to us is accidental. And we do call for divine justice. We do call for divine intercession. We do call for the righting of wrongs. We use our prayers for that. We direct the violet flame. In fact, let's do this. Gaza is a nation of violet fire. Gaza is a purity God desires. Gaza is a nation of violet fire. Gaza is a purity God desires. Gaza is a nation of violet fire. Gaza is a purity God desires. The children of Gaza are children of violet fire. The children of Gaza are the purity God desires. The children of Gaza are children of violet fire. The children of Gaza are the purity God desires. The children of Gaza are children of violet fire. The children of Gaza are the purity God desires. And we see that violet flame going forth to transmute the pain and the challenge and the difficulty and the horror and the tragedy and all that's been going on. And we call for a major ocean of forgiveness to come forth. And we see that going on in every situation that's difficult, that's where we may not have the solution, and it may be out of our control, because a lot of events are out of our control. But we have the control of making the prayer, of saying, of making the calls. That's one thing we can do. We can give it back to God, and we have that responsibility as co-creators with God to give the call. There's a section in the New Testament where they say you will judge angels, and I don't remember if it's St. Paul or Hebrews, but anyway, we're here to judge angels, and we're here to make the call. We're here in the Old Testament. God says, "Command ye me." We're here to command the Spirit of God to do what is right, and then we always qualify our calls with according to God's will. So it's this is a really important thing we can do. So these children, all children who come in, have this tremendous opportunity once again, especially those who were fortunate enough not to be aborted, and that is very true. That's another area that really needs a violet flame, is the abortion situation, because millions of souls are being aborted who had a divine plan and who are supposed to be here and who went through that very traumatic experience of abortion, and their life mission is canceled out, not by God, but by the free will and the system that's down here, that is very, very difficult for unborn children or souls trying to come back in. So those who are here, we're here to balance karma. We're here to fulfill our mission, our divine mission, the one that we were given at a soul level. Because ultimately we want to ascend home to God permanently. Gautama Buddha called it the wheel of rebirth. We want to get off the wheel of rebirth, which is the wheel of samsara. And Jesus in the Gnostic text also talks about that in a slightly different way. But basically, we want to have our victory. And I was looking at this very beautiful and profound dictation that Lady Master Magda gave through Elizabeth Clare Prophet in the early 90s. And Magda was incarnated as Mary Magdalene. That was one of her embodiments, and she's the twin flame of Jesus and his beloved. And she was incarnate at the time when the I Am movement was happening. And so Godfrey and Lotus, known as Guy and Edna Ballard in Chicago in the 1930s and 40s, and they were giving that knowledge of the violet flame to America for sure, and to other nations, but primarily through Chicago. And so she at one point was in Los Angeles at the same time as they were, but she was doing the Four Square Gospel, which was a ministry of healing, an evangelical healing ministry where Jesus was directly working with her to heal people through the Holy Spirit, but she didn't avail herself of the violet flame. She just didn't think this was a Christian teaching, and she was explaining how the souls who were coming out of the I Am movement were so much more clean and polished and ready to go into the permanent reunion with God, which is the ascension, versus the souls who were coming from the Christian movement, like the one she was leading, that didn't have the violet flame. And so that's because the violet flame helps us to transmute this karma, and it can be very difficult otherwise to transmute the karma and not make more karma. So the laws of God are very precise, and God herself can't break the law of God. It's like clockwork. It's very impersonal. God on some level is very, very impersonal, like clockwork, and on another level is very personable, like in the presence of Jesus or Mother Mary or Kuan Yin. So we have to really understand this impersonal level of God, where the law has to be balanced. Jesus said every jot and tittle. And so when Saint Germain came and decided to give us the violet flame, that was a tremendous gift. Also because the masters who sponsor the violet flame have to take on any misuse for it, or any abuse of it, or any lack of use of it. It's they have to give accounting. What's very interesting in the laws of God is that everything is accounted for. Everything has to be accounted for, and there's no free lunch per se. Everybody has to give accounting for every erg of energy that they use or misuse, and everything is calculated down to the last bit. And so the violet flame helps us because it transmutes and it frees us from these situations where otherwise it would be a lot more difficult to balance the karma. And so, we still want to do good works. We still want to, of course, follow the teachings and the masters and Jesus if you're a Christian. But if you can add the violet flame to your regimen, you can understand that it will greatly assist you. There was a man who passed away, and he wasn't ready yet for the ascension. And he had been married to a minister in the church, Universal and Triumphant. And so he started giving messages from heaven. And there's a book called Messages from Heaven. And I believe his name was Leo. He was telling us about what he learned when he got into the etheric plane. And he hadn't balanced enough to, preclude reincarnation, but the masters gave him this opportunity to share his experiences through his wife, who wrote them down. And then that in itself would allow him ultimately to balance karma from the etheric plane. It's a lot more difficult to balance karma from the etheric plane than from the physical plane when we're talking about physical karma. So he talked a lot about the violet flame and the importance of giving the violet flame. And so Jesus and Magda in this dictation were talking about how important it is for us to give that violet flame and how much we can free ourselves if we would just do that. I was reading recently again a dictation by Gautama Buddha where he says the same thing. He's actually asking us to give, I think he was asking for maybe 30 minutes 3 times a day. He was asking for quite a bit. He also asked us, not to have idle words too much, but to basically, if you don't have anything to say, give the violet flame, give a mantra, and it will assist you. It will spiritualize you. It will accelerate you, and it will make it so that you don't have to have as much challenging karma come into your life, or if it does, you're transmuting it faster. And that's another thing to remember. In the Bible, we read, "Sufficient to the day is the evil thereof." That was Jesus's statement. And we understand from the teachings of the masters that what this means is that every morning a certain amount of karma comes on our doorstep to balance. And if we can give the violet flame, we can make it go away quicker and oftentimes in a less challenging way. That doesn't mean you're not going to have challenges, because challenges are how we gain mastery. So we have to have a certain amount of challenges to gain mastery over the challenges. So we can't just do violet flame and expect everything to just completely be amazing, right? But it will help, and it will make things go faster. And ultimately, we have to remember our goal is to balance the karma so we can ascend, so we can, fulfill every jot and tittle and transmute as many as we can. So yes, the seventh ray of God, very important. Fulfilling the Dharma, very important. As much as possible, correcting our attitude. And that's another thing, when I was talking to my daughter, I was talking about child rearing, and we have to, whether it's the child that is given to us to look after or our own child self, we have to really try not to get into grumpy behaviors, misbehaviors, and everything else, bratty behaviors, and so on and so forth. I mean, and I was explaining to her that the masters have told us, and Kuthumi in particular, and he's known as the master psychologist. Excuse me, this phone, it just wants to keep ringing.
Okay, I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Do you have a violet flame routine, a daily routine?
That's a good question. I try to do the violet flame every day. In earlier years on the path, I definitely had a routine, and I think it's very important to have that discipline. I try to get on the decrees with other people in the morning. Lately, I've been doing Kuan Yin mantras, which are the violet flame, or other violet flame decrees. My life right now is very packed with certain things I have to get done. And so I often use my driving time to do violet flame. I find that that's a very good way to do violet flame. I typically start the day with invoking my tube of light, which definitely has violet flame in it. There have been times in my life where I would give several hours of violet flame decrees a day for real. Sometimes it would be more like a half hour to an hour. Lately, because of certain projects I have to complete, I can't do those along with the violet flame, so I'm asking the masters to consecrate the projects I'm doing as violet flame, because they're projects for the masters, books and things that I'm working on. So I would say that it's good to do at least 15 minutes a day and call for that to be multiplied. It's good if you can do the violet flame with other people. The Summit Lighthouse has group services and decrees that they broadcast, for example, but there are others out there too. And then to understand that sometimes we have to be flexible. Mother Mary also told us that when we give her rosary, this counts as violet flame. Some people really like to do Eastern bhajans, like bhajans to Shiva and Krishna and all that, and that can also count for violet flame. But it's nice to really do the violet flame in at least to think about it and to invoke it a little bit every day. I'd say there's no set formula, but we've been asked to give at least 15 minutes a day, if at all possible. So my life requires me to have flexibility right now. So if I had a more less demanding life, let's say, I could make it a routine, more of a routine. But the routine I do have is that I check in with the violet flame every day and I try to include it. And I do participate in the services as much as I can to have the multiplication. So I'm trying to be very honest with my answer.
That's
Definitely
great.
at
Thank you for
least 15
sharing that.
minutes.
Because I
Yeah.
mean, we are all different. We have different lives. And there might be, some people that see this video to listen to your interview that might be in the same situation. They just don't have much time to invoke the wild flame. So 15 minutes is definitely better than nothing. And I do have on my webpage a booster list. I have a video also about it, mentioning all the dispensations we have from heaven. For example, the Amitas dispensation of doing at least 15 minutes vile flame and then calling to him for multiplication of 10 and more boosters. So sorry, we were just cut off by some technical issues. What I was saying is on my website, I have some, I call them Violet Flame boosters. And also, I do have a video about Violet Flame boosters, which are basically tips and tricks about how to use the Violet Flame best and how you can get the most out of it. Like one trick that I just mentioned is the Amritas dispensation, where you can, whatever you put into the flame, if it's at least 15 minutes, it's going to be multiplied by 10. So if you did 15 minutes of Violet Flame work, you will get 150 minutes a violet flame. That is incredible. And then there's other tips and tricks, like, for example, to decree with the messenger, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, because all the recordings contain her energy and also the energy of all the people that were in the room decreeing with her. And all of that is squared and multiplied, and like it's a huge thing. All of the details are in there in the booster video, and I have a downloadable PDF. Anyhow, thank you so much for sharing that because, as I said, we are all different. We're in different situations. Some of us might have like children or grandchildren that need to take care of. When I'm very busy, I just do decrease while doing other things because there's just no other time spot, a slot. So it is what it is, right? We just do the best.
Sometimes I have done violet flame when I'm swimming. You can do violet flame when you're exercising. Sometimes if I realize, oh, it's the end of the day and I haven't done violet flame enough or at all, then I'll fall asleep giving some violet flame mantras,
Mhm.
and I do try to do it with mother as much as possible. It does make a difference. What I would also say really makes a difference is the quality of heart. Like if you're going to do it, whatever you can do, just do it with devotion, do it with love, and don't just do it mechanically. It's easy with decrees sometimes to kind of just do them rote, and we have to really fight that or endeavor to transcend that and to really put the the flame and the earnestness and the meaning into our decrees, like I mean this. And and of course, you know, sometimes we're busy on several planes at once, it seems, but I like to remember the fact that God, the masters, multiply what we do. And if we can give something of quality, it's sometimes even better to do smaller and higher quality than a lot with lesser quality, and then can call for it to be multiplied. So sure, you want to do as much as you can, but you also want to have those moments where you really give it with quality and where you draw nigh to God. And we know the violet flame is the Holy Spirit, so you can call upon the Mahachohan, who is the representative of the Holy Spirit, to help you also. Really comes down to the heart and to the fire of the heart. And so it's good to remember all of those things. I remember Mother talking about how we can do the tube of light in our decrees even in the shower. And so we, you know, have a shower of violet flame too. Also, when we eat food, like let's say you take glass of water or some food, you can put your hands over your food and just say, charge it with the violet flame. You don't have time to do a big blessing. And if you can't even say it out loud, you can say it just in your head, you know, like visualize the violet flame go through your food or your water. That's good. And just like live in this sense of being in a violet flame world and environment. And, you know, the violet light. I even got a violet light here on my desk. It gives violet light, and so any little bit helps. Any reminder helps. We certainly want to do that. We know our souls, when we go to sleep, travel to the retreats through our etheric double, and we can ask to go to the violet flame retreats and give violet flame there. There are a lot of souls when they leave embodiment who are taught the violet flame in the retreats if they haven't learned it here, and who invoke the violet flame. Magda, that dictation tells us that she spent a lot of time in those years between her transition and her final ascension when she balanced 100%.
Who told?
Magda.
I see, I see.
Yeah, so she was doing violet flame in the retreats to balance the karma, to transmute karma. And again, we're told how much easier it is to balance the karma if we're in the physical plane, meaning we made the karma in the physical plane. That's why we have to preserve our planet and try to keep her whole as much as possible so that we have that platform for ourselves and for others to keep balancing karma here. It's important too, when we do the violet flame, to think of the elementals, to think of the nature spirits, to think of the platform of evolution, to think of the weather, to think of all these different situations that require violet flame. The elementals respond to the violet flame, whether it's fire or water, like air, earth, you know, hurricanes, earthquakes, forest fires, and all of that. I had an experience when I was living in Montana where this fire started coming down the hill right up from my house, and it was very scary actually, because it was all very dry, and I knew that just one or two flames jumping over the road, and it was close, was landing on our roof, could have set our house on fire. I mean, it goes so fast, and the winds are so dry and so fierce at times, and especially the Montana winds when they really pick up. And I had to really stop and pray and pray and pray and ask the beings of fire, the salamanders, who are also very much working with the violet flame, to take command. And for about 15 minutes, it was very iffy. I was really concerned. We were out there spraying the house down with water to try to keep it from, in case of flame jumped. But after doing some powerful prayers for about 15, 20 minutes, I had the assurance in my being that our house would be all right. And it was, and the fire was, didn't carry on. The winds went down, but I was giving the prayers and using the violet flame. And and so I've seen this with, with hurricanes. I've seen this with different situations. I was in the ocean yesterday and I asked for the ocean here that's been quite polluted since the last hurricane. I think they're doing construction, so they're putting cement water into the ocean. I'm not sure, but the ocean just seems doesn't have the quality it had, and that is saddening to me. And so I was asking for the Violet Flame to come in and clean up this ocean, clean it up where we are right here, right now. Um, and so we offer that Violet Flame. I put it in the skies. If I see chemtrails, I say, God, call the salamanders into the sylphs of the air and to the Violet Flame angels to dissolve and transmute as much of the chemtrails as possible, so that they don't create as much damage, whatever they are, whether it's bacterial, viral, heavy metals, or whatever it is, like just transmute it as much as possible. Um, so, so anyway, these are things that we have to really think about. Mother, one of the last things she told us before she left was to pray for the elementals, to give that violet flame, and we can ask for a percentage of our being of light, our causal body, to be given, to be multiplied and given to the elementals, as an offering of our light and love. And it's just really important to include them because they're here to serve us. Our planet is so beautiful when it's in a pure form. We go to these places that are so pristine, so beautiful, and the etheric plane is just merging with the physical plane. And there's times where I just look and I say, oh my God, it's so magnificent, it's so beautiful. And then there's other times where it can feel so burdened. And so we can be in the same location and we can be congruent with the etheric plane, or feel the astral energy of the heaviness of the world, the pollution coming in. And that pollution is physical, but it's also spiritual and everything in between. And so we we send that violet flame in. I'm sending the violet flame in all the time to what I read in the news. I look at the headlines, I look at the news, and I'm just putting the violet flame into it because at a certain point, what else can we do? Um, I was very disturbed when I found out what was really going on just down the road from here, Alligator Alcatraz. I was just disturbed by some of the things that were going on, as well as the fact that it was in a extremely beautiful area of the Everglades, and that it was just not the right combination, to say the least. It was a real burden on me. It was an incredible burden on me. In fact, for almost a week, I couldn't sleep. And I just kept praying and praying to God and said, Jesus says, if you pray for the mountain to be removed into the sea, it will be. And I was like, we gotta close this down. We cannot have it here. We cannot have it here. We cannot have it like this. It's gotta, and I kept reminding God every day, I'm asking for this, and it seemed like, well, how in the world is that going to, shut down? They've put up signs, they've built new roads, they've done all these things. And I went in front of it a few times and prayed, and then I just kept getting the sense the masters are hearing your prayers, they're working with you, they're working with this, and now I'm finding out that it looks like it's being shut down. And I just read today that they're saying that they're the last people there are leaving very shortly, according to internal memos and all of that. And so for me, it was a real alchemy because it looked like something that was completely out of reach for me to do anything about this thing. And I could feel that there was a lot of dark energy associated with it for sure. And I'm not saying that because I'm, trying to be political one way or the other, but it was just something that I knew was not of the Christ, was not of the light. And it was a tremendous burden I could feel on the elementals of the area, that to have that energy here in a very protected nature sanctuary that has a very high elemental frequency. And so I was really praying, praying and praying and praying. And sometimes I thought, how in the world, like I saw the signs go up and everything. I said, how in the world is that ever going to come down? But it was like, just keep praying. And I was reminded of other things that we've prayed about, and things have shifted. And that's the thing that I have to keep remembering as I do my violet flame decrees, is that nothing's set in stone. And even though it seems like some things are really, really for sure, the violet flame can change them. It can transmute, it can dissolve. We were told it can dissolve the stronghold of the fallen ones. it really comes down to who controls the thought forms, who controls the agenda. Um, and we want it to be the masters and the angels and the elementals that control the agenda, right? And we want Saint Germain to control the agenda of America and the Golden Age. And so, so putting that violet flame into everything, and realizing that that is how things keep shifting, and to keep giving God the God control of it all, because things are in flux, and things are in flux, and the karmas are in flux, and the violet flame makes a difference. So I'm just giving this as a miracle story for me. And again, it's not so much a political statement. It's just simply a statement of invoking the violet flame when you see something that is of disturbance to the elementals, or of disturbance to certain souls or people or anything. Anytime you see something that doesn't sit right with you, give the violet flame, put it in. Ultimately, all of our prayers are qualified by according to the will of God, and we know God can always do things better than people. And so I'm saying, God, you take command of all of these things. And so um, we can expect sometimes the miraculous and the impossible to become possible with the violet flame. And that's my personal lesson on it, even in outer events. It was a huge walk of faith for me. I said, if you told me, Jesus, that we can pray for a mountain to be removed, and this is the mountain I'm asking for, and I I did not relent. I did. I every single day kept making those prayers with absolute complete my whole heart earnestness. Because I wanted to see a change. I said, this is my backyard. I can't let this happen in my backyard. Not like it is right now. It's just not okay for me. In my backyard to have, or close to me, to have this going on the way it's going. And so anyway, people who weren't so close might not have had the same awareness as I had, but it was very clear for me. And so for me, that was a miracle violet flame story in its own way. Freedom, forgiveness, transmutation, all of the things that the violet flame stands for. God justice, um, the twin flame of Saint Germain is Portia, the goddess of justice. So calling for all of those things to come forth, for our nation, for the nation under God, for making America great again, truly, in justice and in liberty and in freedom, and in the goddess of liberty too, who's another master of the violet flame, and she is the one who oversees immigration. So I was like, these are the masters that need to take charge of this, and so anyway, I'm just bringing that up. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'm very grateful to see prayers answered even on a larger scale. And now I'm saying God's next step is Gaza, and after that, the economy, and then after that, like, I'm just going to take it one bite size at a time, and put the violet flame into it, and compel change to happen from the higher planes and from the collective Christ consciousness. I was gratified to see people in Israel rising up, because I said it's not like like this has to happen through the Christ self of the people. It has to happen. Well, what can I do except send prayers and send violet flame and ask for these changes to take place, so that the children are have a chance, and so forth. So whatever it is that you see, in whatever way, it's the same with the economy. It's the same with everything. I mean, everything. Just we can put the violet flame into it. So I guess that was what I wanted to say. And I just wanted to mention earlier, I was talking about the dweller on the threshold, and that's a not self that is a part of us that we've established. It's been established. It's our soul's miscreation from the time we first incarnated. Any negative thought, feeling, action that we did, and it creates a dweller. The masters have called it the dweller on the threshold, which is like, it's the serpent consciousness, the serpent mind. It's the Saint George standing over the dragon, or Archangel Michael standing over the demon, and Mother Mary with the moon under her feet, Kuan Yin riding the dragon. There's so many pictures throughout the world of this concept that we have to defeat the dragon within, the fallen consciousness within. And Kuthumi told us that our whole life is either going to be an edification of the dweller or an edification of our Christ self. And so we have over time the opportunity to edify the Christ, and so we can put that dweller side into the violet flame. And if we're parents, we know that we are to some degree responsible. We are responsible to train our children to try to overcome that side of them. We have to overcome our own, and then we have to help them give them a pattern so that when they are old enough, they can take that on themselves. And so it's not indulging in the dweller, which we see a lot happening on this planet in terms of the collective culture. And it's basically saying, we're choosing the higher way, we're choosing the path of the saints, we're choosing the path of personal Christhood, we're choosing to defeat the not self, the darkness within and without. And there's no better way to do it than the violet flame. And I think I'd like to seal with the words where Saint Germain said to us, he knew that a lot of us wouldn't make it if he didn't give us the violet flame. So he gave us the violet flame knowing that we would need it. I'm certainly one of them, absolutely. And so I'm very thankful. Saint Germain was the first master I saw, and he was the one who brought me into this path. And I see my little granddaughter now, whenever she looks at the little portable altar I have, she always points to Saint Germain, always points to Saint Germain. And I said, oh my goodness, she really recognizes Saint Germain. He is her master for sure right now. And he's the master of the violet flame. So she has to learn the violet flame too as a little child. And so we have to, this is important. So do you have any other questions?
I think mentioned it all. Thank you so much also for mentioning again the Alcatraz example. Um, because, people really need to have the practical insight also how to use the Bioflame, not only for their personal lives, but also for world matters, world issues, and the elementals and mentioning the elementals and your experiences. So I think that was very valuable and very helpful for my viewers. Thank you very much. I really appreciate
You're
it.
so welcome. Well, remember, all things work to good for them who love God. And I was reading just yesterday how all these Chinese students are going to be coming to America, 600,000, which is, if we have 6,000 colleges, so it's approximately 100 per college, but some will definitely be more than that. And I thought to myself, some people were very concerned about that for good reason. And then I thought, but on the other hand, this could work out for God. I mean, they're coming here, they may end up getting that spirit of Saint Germain of freedom, and we can give them the violet flame, and they could totally turn China around. I've been talking, and praying to Confucius and to Kuan Yin for years about China, and the collapsing of that red dragon of communism has to come from within, and it has to come in a way that it's like a thief in the night, and it has to come like Jesus, the thief in the night, and change it. So yes, so we put the violet flame into all of these situations, and then we can expect the miracles, right? That we do the work, and we do it with love. So yeah.
Thank you so, so much, Therese, for sharing.
Yeah. God bless you too, and thank you for putting all that out there on the violet flame. Yeah.
You're very welcome. Thank you to Saint Germain. I mean, he started it all with all of us.
Yeah.
He's the reason we're still here. So
yeah, exactly.
praise the Lord, and God may
Yeah.
bless you too. Thank you.
Yeah. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.